video series creating the Legacy Lone Star International Lone Star truck. So from our last video, you should have a chassis that looks similar to this. Mostly complete, got all the running gear, frame rails, all your bolts and everything should be in position. And in this tutorial, we'll be talking about collision blocks, model locators, making sure that you got everything put in the right position, and getting our chassis ready to import into the game. So if you can hang around through the video, you'll create your first mod. Add this chassis to our International Lone Star. So let's get started. If your chassis looks like this, then you're ready to move on to the next step, and that's to make sure that you've got all your model locators and everything in place. Because we stretched this chassis out, everything from the cab back, all the model locators will have to be repositioned. So we'll just go through these kind of one at a time. So this is our root object, and notice under here you have advanced coupling 1, advanced coupling 2, and advanced coupling 3. So these look like collision blocks. And let me hide this piece and we can see what it is. Okay, so this is advanced coupling. So when we hook our trailer up, notice that it kind of guides the pin of the trailer into our fifth wheel. So you want to, if you kept everything in the same direction as far as Z, so it's the same distance off the ground, then the only thing you should have to do is just move your collision blocks back. So if these were selected and you grabbed it along the y-axis, you can just move this along the same plane. So I kept everything pretty much the same in the z-axis as the original Lone Star frame. So the only thing I had to do was just move this advanced coupling back into position. And where you want it, let me look down on the z-axis. So where you want it, if we put our fifth wheel back on, you want the edges of it to run along the fifth wheel, and then the stop, if you look, this is the stop. This is right on the end where your fifth wheel is. So when your trailer comes in, it should put the pin at just the right spot. Alright, so that's the advanced coupling. And then some other things. We don't have to worry about the bumper, cabin. Alright, so the next thing is collision blocks. Alright, so these are your collision blocks, and basically any object in the game that comes in contact with this collision block will give you damage. And if we show all our collision blocks, so if we go to visibility tools and we go to our collision locator right here and hit shift and click on it, it shows all our collisions. So notice I have this collision perimeter around this whole frame. So everything is, I wouldn't say protected, but it'll sense a collision if you hit some object inside the game, whether a car, a stop sign, or light pole. If any of these objects if any of these collision blocks come in contact with any objects in the game, it's going to give you damage. And if you look on the this is a stock Lone Star frame, and this block right in here is probably covered by options like gas tanks or steps or something's in here that's maybe. No, I think it's probably, this is probably day cab, and these are probably like the high rise sleeper or the sky rise sleeper probably fills in these blocks here. So you're going to have the same issue. You'll probably have gaps in your legacy chassis. So you'll have to stretch. And what I did, I know that I'm going to use fairings, and I know that I'm going to use toolboxes. And so instead of creating collision blocks for each one of those things, I just made this go down the whole side of the frame. So and these are the same width as what everything on the side of the truck is. But I did have to make these longer in the Y direction to fill in that gap. And collision blocks don't scale the same way as any objects in the game. So you can move these. So if you click on it and you hit G, you can select the axis that you want to move it on. So I can move it along the Y axis, or the X axis, or the Z axis. But what I can't do, I can't scale it. So if you hit S to scale, see, it doesn't scale. So I can't scale it along the Y axis by using S like I do on any other object. So let me undo that real quick, make sure that I don't. So this is how you make this longer. So I'll click on the collision block right here, and if you go down in your tabs, and this yellow square is for object properties, go into object properties, and as long as this is a box and it says the collider type is a box, you will get box X, Y, and Z dimensions. So if you say select convex, if you convert it over to a convex, you can't scale the same way. But most everything that SCS puts on their truck chassis are boxes. So we'll change this back to a box. And then what we need to do, we need to change the length of it in the Y direction. So this should get me pretty close. So what we did, we changed the Y dimension up to, and then once you change the dimension, then you can grab it and move it along the Y axis. All right, still too long, so what we'll do, we'll just change the scale a little bit. Then we'll just keep grabbing it and moving it into position until we're pretty even with the back of the frame and the back of the cab. And that's 5.27. And so to change the other one, we'll just select it, and we can just change the Y direction to 5.27, and then just move it into position. Just like that. So that's how I did my chassis. I just made sure that everything, so you have a collision box on the back, and then along both sides of the frame rails, then around the front. So I just made sure that the whole perimeter of the truck has a collision box around it. If you put anything higher than the cab, let's say like on my legacy truck, I plan on adding a rear wing and adding a air conditioner. So those items are higher than the cab, and I don't want to put the collision box on the chassis if I make those optional. So for each one of those pieces that I make optional, I'll have it will have its own separate collision box, and I'll show you how to do those in a later chapter. But that's how you scale. You can scale in the X, Y, and Z directions, but make sure you go into your object properties and make sure it's on box and you have the X, Y, Z dimensions. All right, so moving right along, we'll go back to our chassis, and I'll hide these collision blocks. So just to hide them, you'll go into visibility tools, and then where you see the collision locator, if you hit Control and then click on it, it will hide all your collision locators. All right, so we got the advanced coupling and we got the collision done. Let's see. We don't need to move the front license plate or the banner or the exhaust. No mirrors. Okay, we got mud flaps and mud guards. So if we, all right, so these model locators for the mud flaps. What I did, I imported the mud flaps. Remember when, if we highlight this and we move our cursor to the mud flaps and then we import the mud flaps in, we can see where it lines up on the frame. So that's what I did. I imported the mud flaps, and I just moved the locator until the mud flaps was in the correct position, and that's how I positioned it. And if you forgot, you can go Shift S, cursor to selected, push your cursor there, and then you can go into your game objects. And I'll show you this again. But if you go into base, your vehicle, truck, Lone Star, accessory, and then if you go into your mud flap, so here's mud flap, do mud flap B, then they'll come in where your pin's located. And so this is where I wanted my mud flaps on this chassis to come in at. Now, if your mud flaps did not come in where you want it, and your pin's okay and your locator's okay, you can move your root object, which will move everything under your root object, and then you can reposition your model locator. Or if you select everything inside your root object, you can just grab it and move it, wherever you want to get it in the right position, and then that's where it'll stay. And like I said, you can also move your root object the same way you can move it along the x-axis or y-axis, the x-axis, or the z-axis. But make sure if you move that root, you have to move your model locator to match your root. They have to be in the same X, Y, and Z location as each other. Your root and your model locator, they have to be at the same spot. All right, let me delete these. All right, so I got the mud flaps in, and then you have the mud guard, which is here, and you do that the same way. You move your cursor over to mud guard, put you some mud guards in place, put you some wheels in place, check your mud guards, make sure they're where you want them to be. And then you have a rear bumper. This is what I added to it. This doesn't come, or I've never seen this come with a SCS frame. This is a locator that I've added. There are a few other ones in here that I've added, but this is another one that you'll have to move the trailer cables So if you move your trailer cables, you got to move it back. Now if you have a diamond plate or some other plate right here, make sure that this center of your object locator, make sure it's sitting on top of the plate, because that's where your base is going to come in at. And let's see, and then the last things we have here are your wheel locators. Well, not the last thing, but one of the last things, we have wheel locators. So these are your wheel locators, and just move them back till they line up with your axles. And I try to put them pretty close to the center, but I don't move them. I only move them in the Y direction. I don't move them in the Z direction. Just in the Y. Don't move them in the X. I just grab them, move them till they're pretty much in the center of the axle, and that's how I position those locators. We don't have to move the front, so they pretty much stay where they're at. And then these last locators, these are pretty important too. These WP, F1, F2, then you got left 1, left 2. All right, so what these do is whenever you're going down a dirt road, or you're driving on wet pavement and the spray coming off your tires or dust coming off your tires, that's what these locators are for. It kind of gives a location where your tires are, so it can create that dust cloud or that mist off the rain flying up. So you'll have to move these, and I keep them in generally the same location in relationship to your wheel pins. I keep them in about the same location. So if we put the wheel pins back up, you can kind of see that. And then you want the direction of the spray going back, so that's why your arrows are pointing towards the back. All right, and then one thing that I forgot to talk about, that's this RLP. That's your rear license plate. So if you look at my rear license plate, it's kind of angled a little bit, and that's because the license plate that I plan on using on this truck has an angle to the backing plate. And so when you position this, you want to make sure that the center of this object, this pin here, is just visible. You don't just move it kind of in the Y direction until you can see the Z crosshairs and this little dot come through the backing plate, because that plate is going to spawn right where this dot in of this Z axis. And notice that this arrow points to the rear of the vehicle. If you rotate this back around the other way, then that plate will be facing inward, just like if you screwed the plate on backwards. So make sure that this arrow lines to the rear of the chassis. And if you look at the front license plate, and you've got a pin for the front license plate, and we didn't. And if you'll notice when we look at it from the top down, because that bumper has kind of a curve to it, this is rotated outward so that it lays flat against that bumper. And then of course we've got the plate displaying in the forward direction, not the rear direction. Those are the model locators. You got to make sure that they're in the correct position. So your wheels will spawn in the correct position. Your license plate will spawn in the correct position. And then one thing else I forgot to mention that you'll need is you have to have your model locator to hook your trailer up. Now, advanced coupling doesn't really tell where the trailer hooks up to. You got another locator, and it's called this hook right here. And this will determine how high the pin is in relation to the fifth wheel, or how far back it's in, or how far forward. There's another model locator located on your trailer, and these will align when you couple your trailer up. So if you'll notice, right here, this center part of this object, let me do that. Okay, so this center part of the object, this on this particular vehicle is right along the bottom rail. And if we look at it from the top perspective, we can see that the center of that hookup is right in the center of our fifth wheel. So that has to be in position to hook your trailer up in the correct location. Now you want that trailer to sit pretty much right along that fifth wheel. You don't want to see, or you shouldn't see, any of that pin sticking up, and your trailer shouldn't sit below this plate. Otherwise, it could ride your fenders or anything else that you have. But that's where the stock pin location is located, right along this bottom rail. Oops, sorry about that. Right along this bottom rail and in the center of your fifth wheel. All right, I hope nobody has any questions about that. So let me hide all that. And let's see. Remember to hide, we hit Control. And that will hide anything. Shift adds, Control hides. All right, so let's move our cursor back. So Shift S will move the cursor back to World Origin. And now I think we are ready to put this chassis into the game and try it out, see how it looks. All right, so the next part of this video, we're going to be working in the files. So if you recall, in our very first video, we went to the base game files, and we went to the game files, and we found a file called the International Lone Star DLC. And if you remember, we copied that DLC, and this DLC International Lone Star, we copied that, and then we used the extraction tool. We extracted all these files out of that folder. So what I did, I copied these files and I put them in. Let me see if I can. All right, so these are in my mod files, and those are the same folder files that I copied straight from the DLC. So I haven't made any modification to these files whatsoever. So I'm going to take these files and I'm going to convert this into a truck mod. And the process is pretty simple. Just highlight them all, right click, add to archive, select zip, and then I change the file extension to SCS. And then this compression method, you want to select store. Any truck you want to select store. Normal compression, you won't get no engine sounds, so make sure that you select store. All right, so we packaged it up into a zip file, so we just made our very first mod. So we'll copy that and we'll put it in our mod folder. So let me find our mod folder, and let me delete this one so it doesn't conflict with it. And then we'll paste it in the mod folder. And then we'll fire up American Truck Simulator. Now you want to make sure that you use a profile that has minimal mods on it. That way you can make sure that you have an issue with your mod and not an issue with another mod affecting it. And then my internet's being a little bit slow, but go into your mod folder and make sure you activate it. And let's go into, and if you go into your vehicle browser, go into truck browser, here's your International Lone Star, and it's placed at the top of your other trucks, which is where your mod trucks go. So it was recognizing it as a mod. But if we go, whoops, I didn't select the truck. Alright, so there we go. So if we go in here, everything should work and look exactly like the DLC. So all your chassis and everything should be there. All your engines, transmissions, interior, all your colors, your paint jobs, all your options. These are all the same. But this is actually a truck mod and not your game Lone Star. So if I go back into the launch pad and I go into mod and I disable this mod and go back into the game, I'll show you. Alright, so I go into vehicle browser, truck browser, and then you'll notice that the Lone Star truck is now where it's supposed to be in your list of trucks. So this is not a mod anymore. Remember, all your mod trucks go at the very top, so it'll go in before this International LT truck. So these are all, I have no mod trucks installed. These are all the stock SCS trucks. Alright, so now we have to get the chassis into the game. So we're going to have to dig into some files a little bit. So this last part of this is modifying some files and exporting. So we need to export this chassis because remember, this is a pit PIM chassis and we need to export it so it converts all our TOBJs back to hexadecimal, and it converts this back to a PMD and PMG file. Alright, so if you go over here to this tab, you see something that looks like a printer spitting out a photo. If you click on it and scroll down to where you helper, the very first line, tools path. So you got to make sure that your path leads to your conversion tools. So I have mine in Blender tools, and unlike your Blender tools add-on, your conversion tools, they have to be unzipped. So you have to take all your files out of the zip file. And so here, this is mine. Here's conversion tools 2_12. And before I started this video, I went to the SCS mod wiki and looked up the conversion tools, and 2.12 is the latest conversion tools, and it will say for 1.37 version of American Truck Simulator. This is the latest, and there is some issues with it, especially with converting the automap files. And that started happening about the time game version 1.40 came out. So I expect some of you to have automat file issues, especially if you borrow materials from different trucks. Just know that you're going to have those issues, and that's part of the conversion process. But make sure that your materials and your texture files, you don't have any exclamation points. So if we go back to here and we click on each of our object piece that has a material file to it, and we just kind of check and make sure that everything's back in sync on each one of our. But what you don't want is the exclamation point. But you can resync all your files if you want to, but make sure that all your texture files, there's no exclamation points in those. And then once you've checked those, point your conversion tools path. Just click on the folder, and mine's on the desktop in the Blender tools. Here it is. And then open the folder for your conversion tools, and then hit accept. And now I have the path set to my conversion tools. And then where it says mod package settings, you'll see another file path. This is the file path back to your base where your parts came from. Wherever you imported this frame and chassis from, that's what you want in this file path here. So if you click on that and you go back, I've kept mine at desktop, video tutorials, mod files, truck mod, and then here is my base. So that's where I want to export this chassis to. And then then you want to name it something. And I usually name it something to kind of describe what's located in that zip file. So in this case, I've underscore chassis because this is the legacy chassis. And these three boxes here at the bottom, you'll see it says clean, export, and convert. You can select the clean. I don't like using it because the clean, what it'll do, it'll group objects together based on the materials. So if you have 10 different objects that say has a chassis base materials to it, it will combine them into one object piece. And if you're still modeling, I don't want to have to break them apart again to model each individual piece. So I just assume that it not clean them, and I've never had an issue with leaving this clean unselected. But you will need to select export and convert. So with these two selected, we're ready to pack the mod. So we'll just pack the mod, and what it's going to do is going to convert my pit and PM back to PMDs and PMGs, and it's also going to convert all my TOBJ files from text files to hexadecimal files. So that's what it's. Okay, so this is going to give me an error, I can tell, because it's going through really quick. If this happens to you, I'll show you how to fix this. But wait till it gets done and gets to the end, and it'll tell you to hit any key to continue. Be careful because you can lock. Okay, so it comes up, press any key to continue, but if you close this box out, it'll lock up Blender, so make sure that you just hit enter to get rid of it. And the reason why that error came in is because I had already done a conversion on it one time, and I left a conversion file in my base folder, and I'll show you as soon as I find it here. Here it is. So if I go into my base, these are the files that I had exported. So I'll delete that, but here's the folder. This is what caused all my problems, this legacy chassis folder. This was my export folder, so I left it in, so you have to delete that. Every time you do your conversion, you have to delete that folder out of your base folder. So this is what you should have. You should have the vehicle unit material folder located in your base. So if we go back to our chassis, and I'm sorry about that, I forgot. I had recorded this video one time already, and for whatever reason I lost the sound, so I'm having to do this over again. So that's why that was there, and I apologize for that. Alright, so we should be ready to pack again. So I'll still have some errors because I got some automat errors from the conversion tools, but I just ignore it as long as I don't have any problems with my textures or my materials, as they don't show up in red. Then I'll just ignore the automat until I can figure out a way to fix them. So the DOS box went away, which is a good thing. So this tells me that this is going to be a successful export. So the DOS box went away, and then if you look down here along this, it'll tell you that the mod was packed successfully or not. Alright, so if you look, it says packing done, mod pack 2, and it gives the base, and it's done, put in chassis zip. And then this error summary, if you'll look, these are all automat errors. So I'll just ignore them for right now. Eventually I'll figure out how to get around conversion tools and end up fixing them. They're not causing me any issues yet, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to fix problems that's not causing me issues. Alright, so if we go back to our base folder, we've got these 4 files that was exported. We got our 3 chassis files, and then we got the zip file. Notice that the 3 chassis files are still in the PIT and PIM. And this is good because if something was to screw up or you mess something up, this is the exact same file that you can just import back into Blender and fix whatever it is. And then your conversion files are actually stored in this legacy chassis zip file. So we'll have to extract that. I'm not connected. Let me connect back to the internet real quick. Alright, so I'll extract these files. Alright, so when I extracted it, created a new file called legacy chassis. And inside this file, these are your modded files here. So you got your chassis files, they're PMD, PMG, and PMC files. And then you have your automat file. So now what we need to do, we need to put these into our International Lone Star file. So this file right here, this is the one that we haven't modified yet. So we'll delete the zip file, and then we're going to install our chassis file. So if we go into vehicle, remember all our 3D files are stored in the vehicle file. Go to truck, International Lone Star, and then all our chassis files are kept in this folder here, our chassis. So these are all our 3D model files, and we just want to copy these and place these in our chassis file. Okay, so now we got the one thing, make sure that it's a unique name. If you go the original file, the root is called chassis 6x4 underscore L. Chassis underscore 6x4 underscore L. Make sure that you rename this, and I just renamed it to chassis 6x4 underscore leg for legacy. So make sure you rename your root before you export. So that's why this comes up as chassis 6x4 underscore leg. So these are new chassis files, and I just put them in the chassis folder, in the vehicle folder. Remember, all your 3D files go into your vehicle folder. And now we have to copy, because we changed materials, you got to copy this automat file. All right, and then we have to modify, we have to have a chassis SII file for our new chassis. So they're kept in the definitions folder. And we'll go back to Truck, International Lone Star. And you'll see a folder here called Chassis. Go into the Chassis folder. And these are all your SII files for all your chassis. So now we need to create an SII file for this new chassis that we made. And the easiest way I found to do that is just to modify another file. So what I do is just pick a file, copy it, and then paste it, and then rename it. And I usually just pick a name that describes the chassis, like this is a 6x4 underscore legacy. All right, and then we'll have to modify this file that we just made. All right, so the first thing we need to do, we need to modify the accessory data. So the accessory chassis data, this first line right here, the 6x4L120, has to match our SII file we just made. So I'll delete that, and then I'll call it 6x4 underscore legacy. All right, and then the name of this is going to be legacy long, and because I put dual tanks on it, I'm going to make this a 330 gallon. I'm going to make this a 330 gallon chassis. And the price of it, I usually add about $10,000 to the price. So I'll make that 40,000. And then the unlock level, I'll just change to 20. And I'll try to keep all my unlock levels, everything I make, the same, 20, which is, that's easy to remember. And then here is our actual gallons of fuel. So I have two tanks. So the first tank is 165 gallons. The second tank will be 165 gallons. This icon is the picture they'll display in the accessory menu inside the game. The model, so this is our 3D model, and so we want to change that to match our 3D model of the chassis we just made, which is this here, the CHS underscore 6x4 leg. So we'll add that here, CHS underscore 6x4 underscore leg. Now make sure you take your time and spell everything correctly, because this causes a whole lot of problems, especially if you're used to putting capital letters in places. Make sure that everything is lowercase. Don't put capital letters, they just cause you a big headache. and then our collision model. And the way I think of these is you have the 3D model, which is your PMD. You have your collision model, which is your PMC. And then this is your graphics model, which is your PMG. Now that may not be exactly what they are, but that's kind of how I think of it. PMG for graphics, PMD for 3D, and then the PMC for collision. So in your collision, we need to make sure that this matches. So CHS 6x4 underscore leg. Variant we'll leave alone. The look we'll leave alone. We won't mess with the shadows just yet. You got an air tank size, air tank pressure, nominal voltage, residual travel. The residual travels for each axle. The one on top is for your front axle, and then you got your two. So I don't usually mess with the residual travels. The next three lines is your powered axles. So this being a 6x4, our front axle is not powered, so it's false. Our two rear axles are powered, so they're true. And then you have the curb weight of each axle. The front one is the weight of your front axle, and then you have the weight of your your rear axles. All right, so these next lines are your default lines. So if you ever got a mod off Steam or got a mod from a friend or one off the internet, and you loaded it into the game and you selected a truck and it displays without a hood or without side skirts on it or no bumpers, that's what these defaults are. This describes what every part that's supposed to be attached to that chassis. So if someone if a modder got lazy and didn't add the default parts to it, then it's going to display without those parts. I think the model looks unfinished. It looks very unprofessional. So make sure that you put all your defaults in. Make sure every part that you want to show up with that truck is in your defaults. And we'll talk more about this later on, but there's a few of them that you have to have. You got to have a cabin. In this case, the default cabin for this particular chassis is Skyrise. So anytime we select the Legacy 6x4 frame, it's going to come with the Skyrise cabin on it. And then it has a standard bumper, standard exhaust, which is the bottom exhaust, and it comes with mud flaps, and then your trailer cables and your side skirts. And then these next two lines, it's conflict with. This tells you that this frame will not work with the day cabin, and it will not work with the high-rise cabin. But since that's really not true for this Legacy frame, I can just delete those. And now it'll work with all the cabins, so there's no conflict. So this chassis here will work with whether you select the day, the high-rise, or the Skyrise. And then once you're satisfied that this file's been edited to your liking, we can just save it. And now, if we package this mod up, remember, add to archive, zip, select store because it's a truck and we want engine sounds. And then we'll copy that and place it into our mod folder. Alright, so now let's start the game and see how she looks. vehicle browser, truck browser, and alright, so we didn't activate the mod because we don't have the International Lone Star mod truck up there. So sorry about that. So we'll go back to Launchpad and we'll activate the mod. So now the mod is activated. We'll go back into our game. Vehicle browser, truck browser. And now here's our Lone Star modded truck. Alright, so it looks absolutely normal. So we should have a frame under here. And there it is, the Legacy Lone. We select it. And there's our frame. So you can see a few issues right away. You can see that our shadow is off, and that's looks like our back of our truck is levitating off the garage floor. Looks really weird. And you'll be surprised at how many modders don't correct these shadows right. But I'm going to show you how to correct these shadows. But don't let your modded truck look like it's levitating off the garage floor. And then you'll see some other issues we have here. You can see we got some red in between the tires, which means there's a texture missing. You can see that our fifth wheel texture is missing. We got some decals where the texture is missing. Matter of fact, if you look closely, it even tells you that texture is missing. So we do have a little bit of issues here. And I did that on purpose to kind of show you what it looks like if you are missing a texture. So there's two ways you can get this. One, you don't copy your AutoMap file over into your mod. And the other one is you don't copy your texture files over into your mod. So in this case, I know I copied my AutoMap file, so it's my texture files that I didn't copy. So let's back out here a second. Alright, we're still in our files. Alright, so what I did when I created the chassis, I took a lot of parts off the Freightliner chassis. So with those parts, I had texture files that I had to put over into my base. Alright, so inside the base, if you go into your Lone Star, there's this one right here is one. This is one I made. There's a few other ones that I transferred over from the Freightliner, but I can't get the images out of my base folder because remember, these are text files. I need these to be hexadecimal when I put them in my mod. So whenever and it created that other folder for me, this Legacy Chassis folder. This is where all the conversion took place. So I'm going to this vehicle folder into the truck. So now I have those same files, but now the TOBJs that go with them, they're in hexadecimal format. So I can just get those files from here. So let me find, okay, so here's our, I'll delete that. So what I want to do, I want to copy all these texture files, just make it easier. And I am going to put them in my mod folder. Alright, so it's telling me I got 40 files with the same name. I'll just skip these files because I know that these files I didn't mess with, so I'm just going to skip those. Alright, so now I have my texture files moved over. I got my fifth wheel and my color 2 file, and plus a few other ones. And now I can package this back up again. Now you'll notice when you're modding, this is what you do a lot. You work in files, you change something, it either works or it doesn't. So there's a lot of working in files. There's a lot of rezipping, and there's a lot of starting and stopping the games to check to make sure that everything's working the way you want it to work. Alright, so copy this back into my mod folder. Make sure I don't get lost here. So now when we go back in, we shouldn't have any of those texture issues that we had. Let's see. Mod's already been activated, so we don't have to activate the mod. So we're going to vehicle browser, truck browser, International Lone Star. Select the White Legacy Loan. And now you can see that our texture problems are solved. We no longer have the red in between our wheels, which I think were the brake hubs. Our fifth wheel looks right. All our decals and plates look right. I'm going to show you how to fix these shadows in a later video, but right now what I want you to do is practice modifying that chassis file, making sure that you can get your chassis imported into the game. Make sure you can do with it what you want to do with it. I see, because I took that conflict out, now I can put the day cab on it, I can put the high rise on it, or the sky rise. It will work with any chassis, but notice I have no side skirts, and I've got an exhaust that's just kind of hanging out in space. You know, obviously it's got a lot of issues, but what I'm looking for is make sure that my mud flaps came in where I was expecting, making sure the wheels come in where I expect them, making sure my mud guard came in where I expect them, making sure that my trailer cables came in where I expect them. Those are the kind of errors. Now, you can't tell until you actually take this out on the road and hook a trailer up. You can't tell if your advanced coupling and your hook point is correct, but I think they are. But anyway, so I've got this chassis in the game. Just created our first mod for this International Lone Star. Didn't take me very long to do. Next thing I need to do is create me a cabin with the Legacy sleeper on it, and that's going to come up in the later videos. I think in the next video we're going to end up fixing this shadow, and what I'd like to do, I'd like to make a couple more frames for this one. We're going to make another frame that's lowered, and we're going to make another frame that is that's painted. So that's coming up in the next video, so make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you like it and leave feedback in the comments, whether good or bad, anything that I can change. And if something didn't make sense to you, leave those as well, and I'll try to explain those in the beginning of my next video. Yes, Skins and Mods University, I believe what it is. I post there a lot. People ask me questions there a lot. I try to answer all of them when I have time. But anyway, I really hope that you enjoy watching this video. Make sure you tell all your friends, and make sure you like and subscribe. And I will see you next week. So be safe, stay away from COVID, and class is dismissed.